Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope all of you are staying well, staying healthy, staying sane. My name is Ellias, and in today's video I'll be talking about all of the recent books I have read. So essentially in this video I'll be talking about books pertaining to the months of December and pretty much the beginning half of January, just because for me I want to talk about them while they're still fresh in my mind, because I just know if I wait any longer I'll forget the finer details, the fine-tuning of some of these books. So before we get further into the video, I would like to take a minute to talk about today's video sponsor, Words with Friends 2. So over this past quarantine, Joy and I, my roommate, have been competing against each other, playing on the Words with Friends 2 app. And we also filmed a really fun video alongside with another friend of ours, and let me tell you, it was a blast. So we filmed and played this game called Words of 3, where essentially you're given a topic and you have to list 3 words pertaining to that topic. Now, one would think and assume that as a reader, as a booktuber, that I would be super knowledgeable about this, that I would be really good at it, right? Wrong. Let me tell you that I'm here to break all the stereotypes surrounding that conversation, because your boy is truly the worst. So if you don't know what I mean, you should definitely check out the video. You can check out the clip right here.
Vitamin D in the sun.
There's no vitamin C in the sun either?
I'm not sure. Name 3 things you can't live without.
Water, air, food.
Yay!
What the hell?
Name 3 things that make you laugh.
Me, myself, and I.
One thing. Name 3 synonyms for the word happy.
Delightful. Excited. No, that's not a synonym. As someone who has a booktube channel, you would think that I'm like literate and know all these things.
Yeah, that's why I chose that for you. I wanted you to win, babe.
So you see what I mean? So I'll have the full video that is posted on the Words with Friends 2 channel linked down in the description box below. So definitely check out the video because it was a lot of fun to film, and thank you once again to Words with Friends 2 for sponsoring today's video. Alright, with that being said, back to your regular broadcast. Alright, so before we officially start, I just want to let you guys know what I'm currently reading, and that is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. So I feel like this author is a very staple fantasy author. I've seen her books and her name mentioned everywhere. She has written a shit ton of books, okay? I kid you not. This lady is doing work and getting her coin, and I respect that. So in 2022, I wanted to get back into fantasy, specifically high adult fantasy, and I was just doing my own research, seeing what type of books are out there, and instead of new releases, I decided to why not go into the backlisted books, because I feel like there are so many backlisted adult fantasy books I still have yet to go through. Lo and behold, I found myself a list, and there are a lot of them. I feel like I will dedicate just 1 month specifically just to read fantasy books. So I'm still figuring out what month that'll be, but it feels like tentatively it'll be in either March or April. So we'll see. If you have any adult fantasy recommendations, please let me know down in the comments below. And before you list them, I just want to let you know that these are the authors I have already read from and know about, like Brandon Sanderson, Patrick Rothfuss, R.F. Kuang, N.K. Jemisin, Robert Jackson Bennett, Samantha Shannon. So those are the majority of authors that I know. But if you feel like there are any underrated fantasy recs, adult fantasy recs, that you think that I should read that are out there, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm currently pretty much halfway in this book. Personally, I think it's really interesting so far and really good. I feel like this book is perfect for anyone who wants to get into fantasy, high fantasy especially, because I feel like in this one, it's less of a higher fantasy scope in terms of like characters, world building, the magic system, basically less chaotic and less layered than I would have expected from, I guess, from other fantasy books in general. This has a bigger base of political intrigue, in my opinion, and I love the fact that this isn't a story about a Gary Stu, someone who is the chosen one, someone who is like all-powerful. Like the character in this book makes mistakes, and there are consequences for those mistakes, like he's learning and growing from those mistakes, which I'm here for. It's essentially about a boy who is a bastard of the king, and growing up he is somewhat shunned from society. However, he does have a small affinity for animals. He can sort of like bond with them, and much later, growing up, he is trained to be an assassin. And so that is pretty much the gist of what this book is about, and I'm excited to see what happens next because things are about to get juicy. I know that this book is first in a trilogy, and I'm debating whether or not to just buy the rest and just binge it. Alright, so first up, we have Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma. So I actually did a whole reading vlog and review for this book, and I won't say too much regarding this book here, but all you need to know is that I gave this book 3 stars. I thought it was pretty underwhelming at some parts and some aspects of this book. I honestly thought the circumstances that these kids were in to form this relationship, I feel like it wasn't really warranted, even though a relationship like this doesn't have to be caused by something super traumatic or horrific. Any type of abuse especially is worth talking about. It's essentially about these 2 siblings who fall in love under these circumstances, and that's all I'm gonna say. So if you want to hear my full thoughts on that, you can go ahead and watch that video, that reading vlog that I did. So there you go. So next up, I actually read and completed this whole trilogy in December. It was sort of like my revival back into the fantasy genre again. This is the Poison Study series by Maria V. Snyder. So the first book, Poison Study, I thought this was really solid and really good. There were some aspects in this book which I thought was really questionable, but we'll get into that in a bit. So this book, or this book series overall, follows our main character who is saved from being executed after murdering somebody to become the commander's food taster. However, soon rebels are threatening to take over the country, and our main character is developing some powers that she can't quite control. That's basically an outer onion of what this book series is about. So I feel like that plot that I just described is more or less the basic tier, the skeletal structure of most fantasy books, if you will, especially in YA, of course. I feel like this book in the beginning is sort of like YA until it gets to the middle, and then it sort of like diverts into adults. The rest of the books are adults, completely adult in my opinion. So if you want something that sort of bridges that gap from YA to adults, I feel like this is a good series to start. And what's really cool about the series is that with the other two books, they take place in a completely different location with a plethora of new characters, and the world building and the magic system and just political intrigue, everything about it was just so interesting to read about. And so yeah, I feel like this is a really solid start to anyone who wants to get into fantasy. So the questionable thing that I had going into these books was sort of the trans representation. I feel like it is extremely murky at best, so I can see what the author was trying to accomplish, was trying to do, but I feel like in the long run, if you're looking for trans rep, then these are definitely not the books that you'll be looking for. There are a few times where the trans character is dead named, and so yeah, that's pretty much my only qualm regarding this series, but I feel like other than that, it was a pretty solid read. So, alright, so next up we have You Reach Sam by Dustin Thao. This was the book for the Late Night Book Club in December, and we just had a live show for it in January. I was not expecting the amount of feels going into this book, so prior to the last show, I didn't really have any expectations. I sort of thought to myself I wouldn't feel anything whatsoever regarding this book. When it comes to contemporary, specifically YA, I'm just not the right demographic. Like contemporary romance, especially in the YA genre, like I have no interest in, right? And I read it, and in the beginning, I was not thoroughly impressed. I was a little bit thrown off and sort of disconnected from the characters because of the writing style. I was just not a big fan of. However, when I got to the end, let me tell you, that was a whole game changer on its own because I fucking cried. Like, honestly, the biggest plot twist of 2022 so far is that this book managed to make me cry. Like, I didn't even cry for A Song of Achilles, okay? I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the lack of sleep while I was listening to this book on audiobook at like 5 a.m. in the morning, or just the lack of brain power. I don't even know. Just that overall, in the end, I was somewhat impressed by this book. So gotta give credit to where credit is due because I actually fucking cried. Like, it wasn't actually full on sobbing, but you could definitely tell that I was crying. So yeah, just to put it simply, this book is about a girl whose boyfriend is killed in an accident. And so trying to handle the aftermath of his death, she calls his cell phone just to listen to his voice on his voicemail. However, plot twist, he picks up the phone and answers. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say, and I'm just going to leave it at that. You can actually watch our live show where we discussed this book in great depth and detail. At the end of the day, 3 out of 5 stars. So originally I was going to give this book, I think like a 2.5 or 2 stars. But after those tears, man, I had to give it 3. So there you go. Alright, so first up, moving into the first half of January, we have The Year of the Reaper by Makiia Lucier. Alright, so this book, funny story, is a book I found while scrolling through Amazon. And yes, just to be completely honest and transparent with you guys, I still shop on Amazon. So, and funny enough, like the couple of books that I found through Amazon that I have read, I've actually really enjoyed. And so I saw this, the cover piqued my interest, I read the synopsis, and I was intrigued. And so here we have this book, I read it and completed it. And safe to say, I'm going to give this book 3 out of 5 stars. So Year of the Reaper essentially follows our main character, who goes back to his estate, back to his home, after he was taken prisoner by a different kingdom. 3 years later, he goes back home and he finds that everything has changed because there is devastating and deadly plague that has essentially killed off so many people, and he is one of the survivors. So he goes back home and he finds that his court has essentially housed his enemies, the people who have imprisoned him for 3 years. And so we have some political intrigue where our main character has to navigate his way through assassination attempts and also just death and pestilence everywhere, while also at the same time finding budding, blooming romance with a young and brilliant historian. So this one was really interesting to me in a few ways. The first one up is that we're following a male character, because I feel like in YA we follow a lot of female characters, but I thought it was just really interesting reading from a non-female character's POV. Another interesting fact about this is that this book was heavily inspired from the Black Plague, which I'm sure you all know is literally the deadliest plague that the world has ever encountered. And so I haven't read too many books set during that time, but you can basically call this book a historical fantasy which is really interesting. So the amount of element of magic and fantasy in this book is like minuscule, like bare minimum. So if you're the type of reader who gets overwhelmed or doesn't like, magic or magic systems in their books, this might be the book perfect for you. So for me, the reason why I'm giving this book 3 to 5 stars is because I feel like this book had so much potential, so much promise, so many things going for it. However, execution-wise, I feel like it didn't fully live up to that potential. Like our main character, this isn't a spoiler, it's literally mentioned in the synopsis, he can see ghosts. However, I feel like that element, that mysterious aspect of him seeing ghosts was never fully utilized in a way where I thought it was worth. And so another thing that I had with this book is that it was extremely slow. Like so slow to the point where I feel like nothing really happens in this book. Don't get me wrong, there are some certain things and some certain plot twists that happens in this book, but I feel like because of the pacing, I was just stuck in one place and just watching everything just go around me, if you get what I mean. Like I wasn't able to be part of it, like part of the story, part of the characters. I still do think that this was still a solid read, but just not quite there. So, alright, so the next book that I read is Defy the Night by Brigid Kemmerer. Let me tell you that this was disappointing in every single way. So honestly, objectively, there isn't anything really wrong regarding this book. If you're really new in like the fantasy category and just the YA genre in general, hey, I feel like this is a really great start for anyone looking to read in that category. However, as someone who has read countless fantasies, especially in YA, I feel like this was so lackluster and at best disappointing in every way. So this is essentially about an illness, a mysterious sudden illness that literally in the whole book we're never given an explanation why, but this illness just basically appears and plows through its citizens and the people in this world. I mean, it's deadly, people are dying, and the only cure for it is this flower that grows in this certain part, this certain sector of the kingdom, where it's heavily guarded and rationed, and of course, our plucky main girl has to go in, steal some, to take some back to her people, her village, the lower class who can't afford it. I mean, it's essentially Robin Hood inspired, but I feel like there was so much lost here, especially in terms of like the characters, the story, and the writing. So essentially, basically everything fell flat. However, of course, to no one's surprise, our main girl gets caught, so she basically has to survive through her own wits while trying to figure out the cure for this plague overall. So this is not a standalone by far. This is like the first in a duology or trilogy. I don't even know, but I for sure won't be continuing. So while the premise itself does sound interesting, literally nothing happens in this book. Like anything substantial at all. Like you have the major plot points. Okay, you can tick all the major boxes. However, everything in between that, nothing happens. But I feel like overall for a fantasy that's building up like its world and its characters and like the story behind it and like the magic system, we are basically self-contained. 2 locations, and I will tell you what they are. In the village where the girl is at and in the palace where she's caught. That's it. We get like glimpses of different parts of the world that sound so much more remotely interesting than where the characters are at. And so if that doesn't tell you in a nutshell how I feel about this book, then there you go. Like I mentioned previously, like this illness, I don't know if the author's trying to set things up for like book 2 or whatever. It's literally never explained or how or why people get it, the way that they do, or why this cure is, the flower. I'm sure there has to be an explanation. The journey that we went on, we're never given a single answer. I feel like this was like a huge cop-out just to lead us up into book 2. Overall, I thought this was nothing special. It was pretty boring and pretty bland. Also, what's really grating to me was that the amount of times the male love interest would say Lord Tessa. So Tessa is the name of our main character. However, in this world, instead of saying like God or some other, swear word, they would say Lord, like L-O-R-D, in the name of the person that they're attributing to it. Every time a main character and the male love interest would interact, he would be like, oh, Lord Tessa, or Lord this, or Lord that. It got so annoying. I was like, shut up, please, that could not be the only curse word, And it hit me. Of course, this poor guy is stuck in YA land, so of course he can't speak or say anything other than that. But I was like, come on, I've seen other YA books that just go more into this, there's damn shit hell asshole bitch, like, there are a plethora of other mild curse words that you could use, and just as saying the same exact thing over and over again. Like, I kid you not, he says this more than 10 times in this book. I lost count after 10. So, and it was really funny and sort of like a little cringe to me how this author would try to create the love interest as like a gray, morally ambiguous character. Because for every like misdeed or evil action that he had to perform or do, she would always give like this justification or a redeeming quality to sort of like contrast it. For an example, Tessa, our main character, would go off and find out that he killed somebody, right? And she'd be like,
tisk, tisk, tisk. Murder is bad. You should not kill anybody.
And he's like,
babe, I know it fucking burdens my soul. I hate it. But you know what? He was a rapist and he deserved to die.
And our main character would be like,
oh, well, in that case, It's okay. You're hot anyways.
You know, just an example, right? Honestly, it was a lack of nuance and complexity for me. Like, not every bad performed deed has to be outweighed by something good, you know? Otherwise, that character, in my eyes, isn't flawed, really, at all. Overall, just giving this book 2 to 5 stars. Objectively, I'm a little more biased in my rating with this book than general because I have read from this author before, and I've actually enjoyed some of her books before. But this was a huge disappointment, and I will definitely be not continuing along with the series. So. Okay, so last and not least, we have A History of Wild Places by Shea Ernshaw. You guys, this was totally unexpected and in the best way possible. So if I had to describe this book overall, it would be like an idyllic dream where the stories are sort of twisted and told from a different point of view and not in the way you expect to hear. So if you didn't know what this book is about, it essentially follows these missing people and this community involved in their disappearance high up in the mountains. So what really made this book for me were the characters and the writing. Oh my gosh, the writing. So far, out of 2022, the best writing I've yet to read. It was just so utterly magical and atmospheric. Like, I really got that same sense of reading this book with The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern or The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This one is just on a whole another level. So I feel like the less you know going in for this book, the better it'll be. Like, don't even read the blurb for this book going in, because I feel like if you're a really well-seasoned thriller reader, and if you're the type of person who can put puzzle pieces really well together, I would highly skip the synopsis for this book. Even though it's not how the plot twist unfolds for me, it's more so of how we get there is what makes this book really worth, in my opinion. So this isn't exactly your straight up thriller, but more mystery and magical realism, with the writing itself really bringing out those best elements of this book. So I'm going to read off a review of this book that I wrote on my phone. This was very slow moving. Not a lot happens. In a way, it's about the history of starting over, forgetting, and remembering the broken pieces of a home, the sense of belonging. The writing was superb. It was really delicate and yet tangible at the same time. It's the perfect book to curl alongside the fireplace or a winter read. This is the type of book where lost things are found and remembered. A quiet book. Almost a feeling of being silent. There's a quote in the book that states, "Silence can hold 1,000 of untold stories." This is one such story. So there you go. In a nutshell, that is my review for this book. So of all the books on this list, this is by far my favorite. I'm, in the end, giving this book a strong 4.5 out of 5. I don't know, I feel like this book has to sit more well with me to become a favorite. So we'll see how I feel within like the next couple of days or so. But also, this cover right here is just phenomenal. So yeah, overall, highly, definitely recommend. So that is pretty much it for this video. Please let me know down in the comments below any fantasy recommendations, adult fantasy recommendations, please. No YA. The last time I asked this question, I did not specify, and I got a bunch of YA recommendations, and someone answered this. Bless their heart, I know they're trying to be kind and helpful, but at the same time, they answered The Mortal Instruments. And I was like, listen, I think we're way past The Mortal Instruments, and also what recent books you guys have been recently reading and loving as well. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all soon with a new video. Alright, so next up, I actually, and it was sort of like, it's, I'm just not the sitting in the dark, listening, or just the lack, or just the lack of brain power, 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 or just the lack of, or just the lack of brain power. I don't even know. Like it wasn't full on sobbing, but it wasn't full on sobbing, but it was in depth. Like it wasn't actually full on sobbing, but you can definitely Right, so first up, moving into the month of January, we have the Year of the Reaper. However, I feel like that element